The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome to our 2021 electronic annual report Q&A session. For this session on the air, we won't be doing any particular walkthrough or going through any distinct screens. We will just be taking questions and answering them as they come up. My name's Chris Bria, and you may remember me from the previous year webinars. Also today we have Andrew Parrish, as well as Kara Morgan, Tim Hall, and a few of our helpers with Esmeralda and Ray handling the questions. So now that we have that out of the way, I guess we can jump right into the questions if we have any coming in. Esmeralda or Ray, is there anything in the question box or in the SLCP inbox?
Nothing yet, Chris.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, will you put up the Q&A instruction slide so people know how to message us?
There we go. Good call. Thank you. Okay. So it looks like we have quite a few people in the webinar, but no one has a question. Oh, here we go. First one.
Yes, so the first question is from Rosine Salmo, and they ask, What if we do not have any data for the 2021 EAR that is related to SB 1383? Do we just add 0?
Yes, that is correct. So all the number fields are required fields, so it will require you to make an entry. And if you have no number to input, just put 0 in those fields. And then there's also an additional description box that you can type any notes for the reason behind that 0 or when program implementation may start if there's a particular reason for that 0.
Thank you. Hopefully that answered that. Our next question comes from Carlos Chavez. They ask, will the EAR be pre-populated with waiver and exemption details that CalRecycle has approved?
I'm assuming you're talking about the NLE waivers. Is that correct, Carlos?
There's a few parts to that, so I can go ahead and just elaborate from there and unmute Carlos if they would like to provide some further clarification. Second part is, will the EAR sections that are waived or exempted be automatically removed or inactivated from this year's EAR? Did CalRecycle send approval letters to jurisdictions for waivers, exemptions, and initial jurisdiction reports? If so, will these be pre-populated in the EAR? My EAR tabs are in 3 colors, gray, black, and purple. What do these colors mean? So again, Carlos, you are unmuted on our end if you wanted to provide anything else, but I'll let Andrew and Chris address what we have so far.
Yeah, I think maybe since there's lots of parts to that question, Carlos, what jurisdiction are you representing?
Carlos states that Dell, Eureka, Humboldt, and HWMA.
Is there a particular one that you would like me to open up? I was going to open up one of those reports. Maybe one that you know for sure has a waiver and exemption would probably be the best one. We can just, excuse me, use that as an example. Real Dell. Okay, you got it.
Andrew, should I pass back presenter to you?
Sure, yes, please.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, Rio Dell. Okay, so let me go back up to the beginning of your question. Waiver and exemption details. Okay, so I'm going to answer your last question first. Do the colors mean anything? No, we're just trying to kind of group the tabs together a little bit and just kind of break it up visually, but no significance to the colors. So waivers and exemptions. Okay. Will the EAR be pre-populated with waiver and exemption details that CalRecycle has approved? No, but you do not have to report on waivers and exemptions that CalRecycle is responsible for issuing. This would only be kind of jurisdiction issued waivers down in, oh, is my little tool not working? My little tool is not working at the moment. I'll try to fix that in a minute. But down here in jurisdiction issued waivers, you'd only be reporting on the jurisdiction issued de minimis or physical space waivers. Up here in the top part, and the department issued waivers, it's specifically referring to this low population waiver. So you'd be reporting on the number of generators waived based on your low population waivers, whether it's census tracts or the entire population. And then the way that kind of this waiver works for the jurisdiction and is you check the box in the grids where that waiver or exemption may apply, and then it limits or doesn't limit, it kind kind of unrequires these red asterisk fields if that low population waiver applies. So in this particular quick case, it does not apply. So if I try to hit save, it's still asking me to provide that information because you have to report on the low population waivers and the generators that were waived from that requirement for collection. I'll just jump real quick to where it does apply. So if it was the entire jurisdiction, oh, this isn't where I wanted to go, sorry. Where is it? This one. So as an example, on the collection container system, if the low population waiver applied to the entire jurisdiction, in this section, you're not required to report on the collection container system for the entire, if the low population waiver applies to the entire jurisdiction. So you check this box. Sorry, my system's running a little bit slow. And then you scroll down. And remember, this grid's a little funky. It's a really big grid. It has its own scroll bar. So then you just scroll over and hit save. And that would be all the was required in that grid. It's just to check that box. It kind of bypasses all of those required fields. Whereas if I did not have this checked, and then I try to save, it gives me this error message that you must select something for both, one for residential and one for commercial. Did I answer all your questions?
Carlos, you're still self-muted if you had anything else to add. Oh, they put in the chat, that example answered everything besides the letters of approval.
Letters of, oh, for the NLE waivers that we send? Is that what you're referring to? For the non-local entity waivers? Oh.
Waivers, exemptions, and jurisdiction report.
So Chris, you want to speak on the process for how the waivers work?
Yeah, sure. The jurisdiction-based waivers that were issued by CalRecycle would have received a receipt message when we got them, and then either an approval or denial message after they've been approved or denied, and those would have been sent to the person listed on the form. For the non-local entities and local education agencies, those are not necessarily going out to a jurisdiction contact. They are being sent back to the person who submitted the waiver form.
Does that answer all your questions, Carlos? Okay, perfect. All right. Do we have another question now?
Yeah, the next question from Thomas Hammond, they would like to know if the previous webinars have been released for viewing.
We should have something on that. Yeah, later today, I think we'll be sending something out.
Yeah, it is on. I can probably go to it real quick and show the audience here where that is. But we are going to be releasing a listserv message telling you where all of this lives, but I will show you where they are. Just giving it a second for it to load. Okay, so on our main homepage, if you go into Programs, SB 1383 implementation, there's a few ways you can get to it, but I'm going to show you the fastest way to get to it. In Program News, we have new reporting webpage available, which takes you to the SLCP reporting webpage. So the address is calrecycle.ca.gov/organics/slcp/reporting, as up here in the window. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, all of the webinar recordings will be right here from the 4 that we did already earlier in June. You just click on the YouTube link, and we tried to kind of specify. So we had 2 that were city and county focused, which essentially just means an individual reporter. The regional agency and designated reporting jurisdiction focus is for a reporting entity that reports for multiple jurisdictions. And then June 8th applied to the special collection districts that provide solid waste collection services. And then again, that listserv message should be coming out later today, Chris. Is that what you said?
Yep, I thought it would be weird if I sent it this morning before this. I didn't want to confuse a bunch of people, so I figured, when this is done at noon, I'll send it.
Perfect. Thank you both. The next question is from Jennifer Weiss, who states that they are new to the electronic annual report in solid waste. They ask, is the jurisdictional annual reporting the info a jurisdiction provides to the regional agency to fill out the electronic annual report, or is there a separate reporting requirement for jurisdictions?
Which regional agency are you referring to specifically, Jennifer?
Jennifer, you're unmuted. Respond.
Trying to figure out, can you hear me?
Yes.
Humboldt Waste Management Authority.
Humboldt Waste Management Authority.
HWMA is not a reporting entity, so it would be getting reported under Humboldt unincorporated and or individual cities.
So if we
Does
have
that
a
answer your
contract,
question?
if we have a
go
contract
ahead,
with
sorry.
HWMA and they are contracted to do the EAR, then I would just provide my information to them.
Chris, do you have more information on that?
And I'm looking up who the contacts are for that, because yeah, that's one of those where it is an unincorporated county report and each of the cities have their own report. But for instance, Carlos is an HWMA employee and he has access to the report. So in that sense, yeah, I guess if you have information for the unincorporated county, you would give it to Carlos.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
The individual cities kind of do their own as well. So I guess it sort of depends on where you fit into that. Are you with a city or with the county or with HWMA?
Yeah, I'm with the county, and Carlos has told me about, information that he's going to need from me. I was just trying to ascertain if there was additional reporting requirements for the county or just this EAR.
Well, for the county, there's the EAR as well as the first capacity planning report that we opened up last Thursday.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
The next question that came in from Sarah Aaron, they ask, what documentation is required for procurement numbers?
As far as the electronic annual report is concerned, there's no requirements to submit paperwork. That would be part of your record keeping and implementation record to keep that in there. But in the EAR, there's no requirement to upload documentation.
Okay, the next question from Christy Serrano. What if our NOIC applies for a whole section, similar to what you showed for low population waiver?
Do you have a specific example, Christy?
Yeah. Christy, you're unmuted on our end if you want to unmute yourself or type it in the questions pane.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't really have a specific part I was thinking of, but like we don't have a residential service at the moment, for example, because it's part of our NOIC. So how would we, I just want to make sure we're like entering the information with our NOIC correctly. I don't really see like any option to put that. Do we just put that in the notes part?
Yeah, which jurisdiction?
Long Beach?
We can Long Beach. So we'll just go to your particular example just to avoid any potential confusion. So if you go in here and you're talking about the residential, so that'd be in the collection systems. So the way that this question is kind of phrased in the regulation is you're answering the question of what collection service is provided. So you'd specify what you're currently providing. And then in the additional details, that's where you could say, you know, as an example, food waste and food soil paper collection will occur on this date, but you'd still answer provide the information on what collection container system is currently provided. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so should I put a 3 container system since that's what we're working towards, or should I just put 2 containers since we have just recycling and trash right now?
I would put what you're currently providing and then specify when your 3 collection container system, 3 container collection system will begin full service.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. We're going to jump to the SLCP inbox with the city of San Jose asking 2 questions. The first of which is, can confirm that the tonnage required for the 4060 SP CAR concrete, asphalt, and rubble program refers specifically to the material received and recorded through the CalGreen program.
So program, what was it, San Jose? So program code 4060 is specifically referring to a SHRI program code. So it's not necessarily just the CalGreen, it's a little bit different than that CalGreen grid. Hold on, I'm trying to answer your question and get to your report at the same time. Okay, so in the CalGreen grid, this is specifically to 1383 and the number of construction, demolition, debris removal activities conducted in compliance. So you enter a number here. Program code 4060, if we check that box, this is referring to kind of AB 939, which is your source reduction recycling element programs that you selected probably many years ago. And this would be your normal screen once it loads up here that you're probably used to if you've reported it in the past. So you just want to ensure that all this information is still true and correct at the top. You can enter a note here if you want. And then I'm just going to go back and show you, I think, where you're referring, where your actual question is. So down here in this recycling section, this inerts checkbox system, this used to be in the program details of program code 4060. Well, we just pulled it out and put it in the report so that if this is all that needs to be updated, that you had access to those materials within the report without having to navigate to the program details, which I just showed you just a moment ago. Does that answer your question?
So without being able to confirm, since this went through the SLC inbox, we'll just go ahead and assume so for now until we get another chance for them to respond. But until then, the second part of that question is, in the previous year's electronic annual report, the MCR and more numbers were broken down into the monitoring section of the report. However, I did not see them in the current year format. Did I miss them, or is this information being asked differently this year?
it is a little bit different. I think we can probably use this one to show you that. It is slightly different, but the question is still there. So one thing to note is we have included multifamily dwelling units with 5 or more units in the definition of commercial business. So it's just one number to report as opposed to 2 different numbers and EARs in the past. And so if you go into the more or the MCR grids, you'll report, so we're looking at the MCR grid at the moment, number of commercial businesses, which includes those multifamily dwellings with 5 or more units that are required to recycle. And then number of units that are not recycling that are required to recycle. And then you're monitoring to inform those not recycling, you would enter that information in this box here. And then it'd be the same for more, which I can show you. Very similar structure in the more grid as well. Does that answer your question?
Go ahead and assume it does for now. The next question in the SLCP inbox is from Noreen Sunatek of City of San Juan Capistrano. Please clarify the time period for the 2021 year as it relates to the procurement adjustment section.
Well, specifically for 1383, I'm just going to come back to the web page. It tells you what we're looking for in this first report, which is right here. So for AB 939, which is Shri and HHW, report on 2021 status. For MCR and more, report on the most current data through June of 2022. And for SB 1383, which would include that parts of that procurement section, and maybe we can get a follow-up question based on what I say here. You're going to report on implementation from January 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022. And then if you have no data yet for programs such as procurement or edible food, then put a 0 for data fields and include an explanation in the notes. And the notes meaning the additional description. So to show you specifically in the SLC procurement grid, you don't interact at all with this grid. But within these grids, if you have not procured yet, because it's not the end of 2022, you can just enter 0 in whatever fields may apply. And then in this box, you can provide an explanation. It is an optional box, but you can provide any additional information you want to in that box there. Does that answer your question?
And I do see Noreen online. If you did want to ask any additional information, Noreen, you are unmuted on our end.
The second question was related to adjustment of your procurement target, that section, if you could explain it.
Sure. So the adjusted recovered organic waste product procured grid is if you want to, so you can kind of see at the top of the page is 82,383. That's the procurement target of the organic waste, recovered organic waste product units. So all these conversion factors for DGE and kilowatt hours and therms, which I believe are right here in 189942, has all those conversion factors in there. So if you believe that of the total organically derived or not transportation fuel, electricity, and gas used for heating applications that the jurisdiction uses is nowhere kind of near this target here of 82,000, you would then say, yes, I want an adjusted target. You then enter the total usage of transportation fuel, your electricity, and gas use. I'm just making up numbers so you can see what it does. Hit save, and then this would be your your adjusted procurement target over here based on your inputs. But your inputs here are going to be all your transportation fuel use. So whether it be for fire or police or maintenance vehicles or collection trucks, you would enter that total usage there. Electricity would include street lamps and all your facilities and any other electricity uses, wastewater treatment plants, and the same goes for gas. So it'd kind of be total usage, which would most likely be based on kind of utility-based statements for all of your facilities within the jurisdiction is what you're entering here, organically derived or not. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I was wondering about conversion factors. I mean, are we converting then any of this before we put the number in?
No, so on this, for these particular ones, you're going to enter your diesel gallon equivalents. These are the units here that you're going to enter them in: diesel gallon equivalents, kilowatt hours, and therms. And then the conversion factors listed in 189942 is how they're converted over into the recovered organic waste product units.
Which is up at the top, that procurement target?
That is the math that this is doing, yes. It is those conversion factors listed in 189942. They're converting what is input in these fields here into those recovered organic waste product units.
Okay, thank you.
And then if you don't want to implement an adjusted recovered organic waste product procurement target, you just say no, and then you're done with this section. And then you're just basing your procurement target off of the population-based procurement target right here.
Did that get that cleared up?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
While we're still on procurement, Megan Browning asks, considering we're reporting for the first 6 months of SB 1383, January to June, is it expected that the procurement numbers reported are only 50% of what the procurement target auto-generated into the EAR is? And Megan, you are unmuted on our end if there's anything else you want to add.
Okay, so you're only reporting on what you've procured from January 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022. So if you haven't procured anything, you would just enter 0 in the fields where that may apply.
Okay, I was just confirming we do have numbers, but that number that's auto-generated into the EAR right now is for an entire calendar year, not only 6 months.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Next question is from Trishana Robinson, asking, can you please show in the electronic annual report where counties will select jurisdictions that inform us that they have an approved NOIC or low population waiver for capacity planning?
So capacity planning is not related to the electronic annual report. That's a separate report. So no jurisdictions do not have to report to CalRecycle on capacity planning unless the county has identified that jurisdiction to submit an implementation schedule. Does that answer your question? So you're going to report all of your capacity planning information to the county, and then the county reports to CalRecycle for the county.
You're muted, Trishana.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually from the county. I thought that maybe we were inputting the data in the EAR, but it sounds like it's a totally different report.
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I can
Okay.
show you, right? Which county?
Los Angeles.
So this will be coming out. I think, didn't this already come out, Chris? Didn't we release this?
Seems like it was
believe
so
we
long
did.
ago. But yes, it was on Thursday.
Yeah, so we just opened this up. So you log in the same way into Logic, and then you report for the county here. And then if you had any jurisdictions to identify that either need to submit an implementation schedule or that didn't provide any information in that 120-day time frame, you just select them here and move them over. And this is what's going to identify to us the jurisdictions that either didn't provide the information to you or need to submit an implementation schedule.
Okay, so if they notify us that they have a waiver, how are we notifying CalRecycle? I guess that's my question.
A waiver to
We have a few,
providing you information?
yes, capacity data. A few jurisdictions are saying that they're unable to provide the data because they have a waiver. So I'm just trying to figure out how do we relay that message to CalRecycle? In last week's webinar, someone mentioned that there's somewhere on this report where we select the jurisdictions.
Yeah, so this is the only jurisdiction selection areas. Really, the only thing that can be used as kind of a notes box here is this, but that's not really the purpose of it. I don't know, Kara, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if a jurisdiction is waived. So for example, they don't have to do any capacity planning for organic waste capacity, and they've informed you of that. We also already know that information. So I guess, Andrew, I'm not thinking there's anything that the county would report or would need to report to us in the capacity planning report for that. Is that correct?
Okay. You are correct that there's nowhere for them to report that information, but it sounds like we already are aware of that information.
Yeah, because we would have approved the waiver. So does that help answer the question? So we already know that you don't need to report to us that a particular jurisdiction has been waived from organic waste capacity planning. Because we already have that information, and it doesn't obviously trigger an implementation schedule. So there's no need. So does that help answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Kara, and
Yeah,
CalRecycle
sure.
team.
Hey, you bet. And then if for any reason you are wondering, like, do they, don't they, feel free to contact your LAM liaison and we can validate any of those jurisdictions. They also will be posted on the waiver website as well. So there's a couple ways to check.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is from Ria Varkes. They say, in the collection systems tab, does the number of generators mean the same as number of accounts? Some accounts include multiple generators.
Yes, accounts is one way you can specify that generator number.
Next, we have a question from Thomas. Actually, I believe going back to Carlos Chavez. Sorry. Okay. Are these available in a public-facing report page?
Chris, can you answer that question, please?
Guess I'm a little stumped on what exactly that these are and the public facing aspect. If you're speaking of this whole EAR system in general, no, that is not available on a public facing page. If you're referring to specific data from the reports, some is, some of the new stuff is not, and it won't be until the reports start getting submitted. Carlos, if you'd like to elaborate a little more, that might be helpful. Beyond that, I'm not sure what the specific context of that question is.
Carlos, you are self-muted, unmuted on our end if you'd like to provide a little bit more. If you cannot unmute yourself, I'll go ahead and check the chat. It looks like they did provide some clarification. This was for the approval letters for waivers, exemptions, and initial jurisdiction reports.
The approval letters are not posted on the website, but jurisdictions that have been waived are the initial jurisdiction reports. There's nothing really on the public side for that. We're still processing the last few batches of them. Anyone, when they got submitted, they would have received a receipt message saying, you know, we've got it, thank you. And since that's kind of, initial April information, I don't imagine that would necessarily be, fully posted anywhere. A lot of it will be superseded by this annual report once it's turned in.
Thanks, Chris. The next question from Rosine Salmo is the whole EAR report available to export to Excel? That would make it easy to fill out in a shared document.
Yes and no. So it's available on a per grid basis to export to Excel. And then you can also do a report summary, which is a PDF version of everything that is reported in the EAR, but not in an this report summary would not be in Excel format. It would be in a PDF format. So you'd have to compile all the individual grids and put them into one Excel document after exporting each one individually.
Thank you. Michelle Hunt would like to know if we can please include a link to the page in the email that goes out.
A link to which page? Oh, you
this
got
is
it,
probably
Chris.
in reference to the reporting page and the old webinars and all that. And yes, that should be going out, I don't know, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, probably around the time this is done.
Thank you. Next question from JC Bolden. Where can we find the most current reporting requirements for non-local entities?
What kind of non-local entity are you?
JC, you're unmuted.
Good morning, Community College District.
I believe for this reporting cycle, community colleges do not have to report as part of the, at least not to CalRecycle, unless someone wants to correct me if I'm wrong for this calendar year. I must be correct. So yeah, no current community college reporting requirements this like kind of legislative cycle, but that does change. I think we find out October-ish if whether or not community colleges are required to report to us or not. And then at that time, we usually send out lists or messages notifying you if you do.
Yes,
Okay.
it's tied to the budget cycle. So we'll find it, yeah. It's usually September, October. In the meantime, as a state agency, it would fall under the state agency reporting requirements if that ends up happening.
Okay, so just to clarify, so for 2021, there are no state agency reporting requirements to CalRecycle from a non-local entity, correct?
From community colleges.
Yeah.
Other non-local entities that are state agencies would still be submitting their annual SARC, State Agency Reporting Center SARC report.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you both. The next question from Sadie Galdas is, do you have a Word document or another format of the EAR so we can work on it as a draft before entering final information into the online program?
No, we will not have a template for this reporting cycle. The previous template that we had out, we took down because it was inconsistent with kind of the final build and we didn't want to cause confusion.
Next question from Rena Schwartz. They would like to know how they make sure that they are on the listserv.
Sure. Let me put that up for you.
And Raina, if you're speaking of access to Logic and or the local government mailing lists, I'd updated your contact profile about 15 minutes ago. So you are going to at least be on that list.
Andrew, did you still want to walk through the process of checking which listserv you're on?
Oh, you know, I'm not as familiar with that. If someone else wants to do that, I was just going to provide kind of coming to this listserv. Whoops, I clicked the wrong button apparently. Sorry about that. Oops. Where'd you go? Hold on, sorry. Okay, so at the top there, at that website for subscribing to SLCP listserv, you can subscribe to it there by entering that address if you're not already on it. I don't know if Chris, you want to walk through checking, because I'm not as familiar with that, if you wanted to walk through that.
I don't know if we need a walkthrough, but that's specific to the SLCP listserv. We also have the mailing list for local government contacts through the Logic database. And if there's any other listservs you would want to join, that same link, but without the subscribe-152, that calrecycle.ca.gov/listservs would take you to a list of all the lists, and you can sign up for anything else you'd be interested in.
Thank you both. Just wanted to make sure that we addressed that before going to David Briggs. Under the Contamination Inspections and Complaints tab are, quote, inspections considered only those required for jurisdiction oversight of edible food generators, or do inspections also include the actions and enforcement steps that jurisdictions may take as part of follow-up? That is after contamination monitoring, visits to problem sites.
So I think you're referring to route reviews, is that correct? For that second half of that question.
David, you're unmuted on our end if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. I guess maybe it's semantics. Inspections in the regulations are, they talk more about enforcement. I know inspections also refer to the edible food, but it seems like in the reporting, inspections only refer to, if I'm taking it right, they only refer to the edible food inspections. So
Yeah,
Article 14 refers to inspections over and over again, but they're talking mainly about, follow-up to the contamination monitoring.
So I'll start with inspections. So inspections here, the first three reportable categories are your tier 1, tier 2, and your food recovery organization and services inspections.
Okay.
There is a reporting requirement for the number of commercial business inspections, if applicable. So this could be where if you are doing site visits to particular business and doing an inspection, you could enter that information here.
Okay, that doesn't, I'm sorry, when they say commercial businesses there, they're not talking about edible food generators.
Not in this very last line item, no. That would be reported in these three categories up above.
Okay, because that looks like a subcategory of that same question about commercial edible food generators.
Yeah, this is just referring to the reporting requirements of 18994-2K3.
Okay, and so
commercial businesses in there.
Okay, so that does refer to edible food generators then. Yeah, the section, under Article 14, section 18995.1 refers to jurisdiction inspection requirements.
Yeah, that you're talking about contamination monitoring?
Well, the follow-up to that, I think, is what they mean.
So for contamination monitoring, it has its own grid. So if you're doing route reviews, right, you
Okay,
select
that's under
that.
enforcement.
You'd enter the number of route reviews, and then the number of notices, violations, or targeted education materials issued to generators based on your route reviews, you would enter here. Does that answer your question?
I think if that's all that's required in the report, yeah, maybe the rest of what the regs are referring to is only required in the record.
There is definitely a lot more record keeping requirements than reporting requirements as far as inspections are concerned.
Yeah, okay. I see. So, yeah, so it's in both. We'll go to enforcement and monitoring when we're dealing with the inspections that have to do with the follow-up. Okay, just want to get that clear. Thanks.
Okay, no problem.
Next question from Billy Miller. If the jurisdiction has not completed their procurement target by October 3rd, do we just enter the planned procurement for the rest of the year? And Billy, you are unmuted on our end.
So for this reporting cycle for SLCP specifically, or 1383 procurement, you're reporting on what was procured from January 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022. In August of 2023, you will report on entire calendar year 2022. Hopefully that's not too many dates I threw at you. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers the question. So basically, if the jurisdiction has not procured anything from January to June, we would report nothing.
Well, you report zero.
Report zero,
But
yeah.
yes.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Next question is from Rena Schwartz. Just asking, how long does it take for a jurisdiction contact to be updated?
Depends on how long it takes me to wander back to the Logic mailbox, but this one has already been updated. So sometimes it's super quick, and we got through most of the backlog from the EAR release and the capacity release. So generally they should be done on the same day unless it happens really late in the day.
Thanks, Chris. Deborah Jabinski asks, in the procurement tab under SLCP procurement, can you please confirm that the pre-populated procurement target is for tons of compost and mulch products?
No, this procurement target is in recovered organic waste product units. So it's converted your DGE, your kilowatt hours, your therms, your kilowatt hours again, your tons or cubic yards. Mulch is also in tons by the conversion factors in 18994.2. Just based on off the top of my head, if someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I do not have the regulations in front of me as far as the procurement section listing all those conversion factors. So it could be all in, because I believe I'm actually not going to speak on it because I'm not sure. One of them's 1-to-1. I don't remember which one it is though, as far as conversion factors is concerned.
Hi, this is Tim, Andrew. I can help with that. It is mulch. Mulch is the 1-to-1 conversion factor.
Thank you, Tim. And
You're
can you identify the procurement section again for me? Was I correct?
18993.1.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you both. The next question from Tim Kruger, asking about collection system. One, in a jurisdiction with no department waivers and where number 2 or 1 container organic waste collection service is offered, Are generators with no blue container counted as other? This one has a couple parts, so I'm going to break it down.
Sure. Let's move over to that section. Okay. So for collection container systems, you're specifying the collection container system that is currently offered, currently provided. If, for example, you haven't fully implemented your collection system, you would then enter in the additional details when your fully implemented collection system would begin. So as an example, if you have 3 containers and have gray, blue, and green, but are not currently collecting food waste and food soil paper, you can specify in the additional details of when food waste and food soil paper collection will begin and in which container it will go into.
The same jurisdiction are generators with a blue container and whose self-haul organics counted as other. And Tim, you're unmuted if you want to provide any extra detail.
Yeah, I think, Tim, I might need a little bit clarification on kind of the collection containers currently offering to answer your question.
I'll go ahead and ask the third part to see if this provides anything. Are jurisdictions with a blue container and a physical space waiver counted as other? So it seems like the question is, under what circumstances does, what would constitute an other for a collection system requirements and reporting?
Hey, Andrew, thanks, Ray.
Yeah.
Just to add, I think, you know, in general, when we're talking about this particular grid, if in general a 3 container collection system is provided to generators, then we're looking for the total number, right, of generators that have that system. Additionally, there are waivers that can be granted. So for example, let's see, right, in the first one where a generator is self-hauling, if we're talking about a commercial business, that would be a type of de minimis waiver that a jurisdiction issues to that business so that they're waived from collection service. Waiver information is in a separate grid, and I'll let Andrew speak to that. And then in the last scenario, this is another type of waiver, physical space waiver. So in this case, the jurisdiction offers in general 3 container collection system, but they have issued a physical space waiver to a business or a resident for blue container service. So again, there's a section in the report where you would report on waivers. Andrew, does that help? And do you want to add to that?
No, I think you nailed it, Kara. Right here, kind of where my pointer is the waivers and exemptions. And I'll just click to it to show you that where Kara was specifying. So in jurisdiction issued waivers is where you'd report the de minimis or the physical space.
Tim, can you let us know if that helped answer your question?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. I actually had to quit the webinar and reopen it to authorize my microphone, so I missed some of that. But basically, I was just asking if it's a jurisdiction where they are not offering a 2 or 1 container organic waste collection service, and the generator has no blue container, if they're counted as other. And then in the same situations, if they have a blue container, but they self-haul organics, if they're other, and then if same situation, if they have a blue container and they have a physical space waiver, if they are other.
So can I ask, you're providing a 3 container service for the entire jurisdiction?
So yeah, the only container service that would be available would be 3 container. But maybe some people have not yet subscribed.
Right, so you're offering 3 container system. And then if they, and maybe this is the part you missed, but if they have a physical space or a de minimis waiver from one of those containers, you're still providing a 3-container collection system, and then you'd report those that have the physical space or de minimis waiver from a particular can in the waivers and exemptions section. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And Tim, Tim, I'll add one more point to that. You also shared a third scenario where a generator has not yet subscribed, right, to that service. The jurisdiction hasn't issued a de minimis waiver or physical space waiver. It's just that they have not subscribed. So that situation is not in the numbers per se captured, because we don't ask for the total number of residents, total number of businesses. So that information is not captured. That's information that you would be keeping in your record keeping.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. The next question was from Maya Hoffman. They said October 1st is a Saturday. Is the report still due on a Saturday? So the report would be due on October 3rd, since the 1st is a Saturday. Kanya Vivanti shared, there's a 78-page EAR help report that was updated. That was updated this past month. That might be helpful to see the screens for each tab. So I don't know if you wanted to share that, where that report is.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, actually. Appreciate that. So when you first, let's see, get to the right spot. So on your home page, before you go into any of the sections, the EAR user guide is about midway through the page. There's a clickable link, and that's the PDF that she's referring to.
Perfect. Mabel Young, sorry if I mispronounced that, would like to confirm that MCR and more for calendar year 2021 and Jan 2022 through June 2022 are now due on October 1st, as opposed to previous years, which only calendar year 2021 info would be due on August 1. And Branch Chief Ashley Yee stated, correct, this is for this year, only the EAR is due on October 1st, really October 3rd, since the 1st is on a Saturday. And after this year, the EAR will be due on August 1st. Just wanted to share that with those that are not participating via GoToWebinar. And the next question is from Jana Falk. I see a lot of export to Excel buttons. Is there a master export to Excel function for all the questions in the EAR? I'm asking as a regional reporting entity reporting on 5 jurisdictions, and it would be helpful to prepare in Excel and send requests.
No, to answer your question directly, it's on a pure per grid basis is how to export to Excel. You can, however, on the submit confirmation page, get a PDF summary report here.
Andrew, to that point, I mean, I suppose it's something we could explore in the future. I think to Andrew's point, in the meantime, while it might be a little bit cumbersome, you could go to each of those grids, export to Excel, right? And then if you're working in one Excel file, you could have it be separate worksheets, for example, or you can end up putting it all together. So a little, you know, it would take a little time at first, but certainly possible to take all those grids and put them into one Excel. Andrew?
Thank you for adding that on. Yes, that be, yeah, we can explore something maybe in future reporting cycles, but for this reporting cycle, we won't be releasing an Excel tool.
Yeah, thanks, Karen, Andrew. Marissa Gann also requested that if the grids could be made available in one Excel download for next year's year.
Yeah, maybe something we'll explore.
Okay. Next question from Alexander Bradu. In certain sections of the EAR, there are references to the relevant regulatory text. Would it be possible to make those references into clickable links that we could click to be taken to the cited section of the regulatory text?
That's good feedback. Something, well, not for this report cycle because we already released it. but something we'll put to the list of things to consider for upgrades for next year.
I'm not sure if this next question from David Briggs was actually a follow-up from the previous question that they asked. Under the Enforcement and Monitoring tab, some items have a checkbox for low pop waiver. Does this allow jurisdictions to indicate that they have a partial low pop waiver?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So something we covered in previous webinars, which I don't think this one does have it. No. Chris, do you know of a low pop waiver off the top of your head that I can go to?
Like a county one or
jurisdiction?
I mean, I think for a lot of them have it. Which one are you're in for a jurisdiction? Try for two.
Since David represents Napa, can you pick a county for Andrew?
Yeah, go to Napa.
Go to Napa.
Yeah, it's like Napa
Thank you,
has a
Karen.
couple wave tracks. Yeah.
Unincorporated.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the functionality is concerned with the waivers and exemptions, we'll go here. So the way this works and the way we had to write it into the code is if a low population waiver applies to the entire jurisdiction, you click low population waiver, you can save and you're not required to answer any of that information because your low population waiver waives you from those requirements. If you only have a kind of a partial low population waiver for certain census tracts, you still check this box, and this will only populate if you have an approved department waiver, which you do in this case, but you're still required to answer the information in the parts of the county that are not waived. So you would just be answering these questions for the not waived census tracts and exclude the waived census tracts. Does that answer your question? And then if you, this particular grid doesn't have it, but a lot of the other ones have an additional description box where you can put additional information if you wanted to get specific about those census tracts that are waived here. Or anything else you wanted to say about that particular section.
Okay, that helps a lot. Actually, like Chris mentioned, we have a partial, and we still have a place when we check the box, we still can enter the information for the rest of it. So that's what I needed to know.
Yes.
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah.
Okay, real quick, Lori Mara would like to know if there's a time limit to respond to questions while in the ear.
Chris, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, there's sort of depends on how you're doing it. There's not a specific time limit per page. There is an hour and 20-minute sign out. So if you're in one tab and only working on that, as long as you keep making some kind of move, you'll get 2 hours. But if you, let's say you have 2 tabs open and one of them's been open for a couple hours, but you haven't touched it, when you go to make a move or press save on the tab you've been working in, you might get that timeout notice and it might force you to sign in. The best way around that is if that does happen to you, sign back in and then press back on your browser a couple times and try to get back to the page you were on. Sometimes it'll still have the information before you saved it. Sometimes it won't. So that's just something to keep an eye on. It happens to me all the time. I've got so many tabs open that I'll be sitting there doing stuff and then all of a sudden it gives me the note and then I see each one of them sort of do the timeout thing. So just be wary if you have more than one tab open, but other than that, you get 2 hours.
Thank you, Chris. Next is Ria Vargas. Can we just enter the recovered organic waste products procured if we do not have the information available to show our adjusted target? Ria, you're unmuted. If there's anything additional.
Well, so I'm from the city of San Jose. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so you showed there are the two sections, the recovered organic waste procurement and then the adjusted procurement target. Would it be possible, if we don't have the information available for the adjusted target, to just include the information we have on the recovered organic waste procured?
Yes, so if you, let me just open it up real quick. So if the jurisdiction is not implementing an adjusted recovered organic waste product procurement target, you just say no and save, and you're done with that section. And then this grid up above is where you'd enter your recovered organic waste products that you've procured to kind of to reach toward your procurement target.
Okay, so but if I guess if you want to show that we would like to use or work towards the adjusted procurement target, we would need to have all that information available for the previous calendar year.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. The next question. Sorry, next question from Marissa Gann. Are we submitting tonnage for this year for January 2021 through June 2022? And Marissa, you're unmuted on our end.
Chris, will you take that question, please?
Let me find that one. This is, are we submitting tonnage for this year for January 2021 through June 2022?
We'll just explain how the disposal works typically for the year.
Yeah, it's like depending on what tonnage are you speaking of. If you're talking about for the per capita rate calculation, that is going to be calendar year 21 only. Same thing with any tons you might put in for the individual SHRE program tonnage. If it's related to any kind of tonnage for procurement, then that would be for 2022, the first 6 months. Does that cover it, Marissa? Is there a tonnage I'm missing at this point? There could be. There's a lot of different ways that can be used.
Take the silence for confirmation. Next question is from David Briggs. Is there a report section in which jurisdictions will need to report on the AB 1276 designation of enforcement agent, notice of violations, and fines? David, you're unmuted.
$12.76. Are you saying 1826?
1276 is you know, the foodware bill, and that we had to designate an enforcement agency by June 1st.
Hey,
we
Dave,
have to yeah.
There's no reporting to CalRecycle. CalRecycle doesn't oversee implementation. There's no reporting in the EAR on that program.
Okay, I was wondering if I was missing something because I hadn't seen anything.
Yeah, no, we've had a lot of questions on that, but nope, you're not missing anything.
Okay.
Okay, the next question, we talked about this a little bit, but if there's anything else to add, Marissa Gann would like to know, can you please provide some examples of the purpose of what the other field should be used for the collection system tab?
You know, we put that in there just in case we didn't capture all the potential possible different collection container systems specified it with 3+, 3, 2, or 1. It's just kind of a catch-all if there was something weird out there that we were not aware of that didn't necessarily fit into one of these kind of determined categories.
hopefully that answered that. The next question is from Caitlin Lells. MCR and more will be cubic yards for 2021 and Jan through June 2022. They thought it was Jan through June 2022 was only SB 1383 information. I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you, Caitlin, to get some more information on how the jurisdiction that you are responsible for is reporting.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm with the County of San Diego, and I think I'm just confused on exactly what it is we're supposed to report on in terms of January to June of this year. I heard a question earlier say that MCR and more should be included for the full calendar year 2021, as well as the first part of 2022, but to the best of my knowledge, that contradicts previous clarification.
So this is Ashley. Andrew, can you go to that section?
MCR and more?
Yep. Thank you. So we split it out into 3 different charts, but we know some jurisdictions are only keeping track of their 1383 numbers. So they may actually put the same number in their MCR and more number as their 1383 number, which would be the January to June of 2022. If your jurisdiction is keeping them all separate, then you would be able to do just the calendar year of 2021 for MCR and more, and then the first 6 months for 1383. For those jurisdictions who are just keeping track of one number, the way that enforcement would look at this year is we would expect that more and MCR do have 100% compliance along with SLCP for that instance. Does that make sense, Caitlin? So it just depends on how you guys are keeping your records and tracking.
So should we just say what time frame is included, like in the narrative portion?
You can, yes, that would be perfect. So if for MCR more, you're just using your SLCP number, just say in the additional description. If it is all separate, you could just say MCR mores for calendar year 2021.
Okay, is that the same for inspections? Where you had like tier 1, tier 2, and then just like the total commercial business inspections?
You can. So what I would suggest is for, I think, almost every single tab in here, there is additional description part. You could put as much information you want there to split out years, to say if it was for more or more MCR more or 1383. So I would use those boxes as much as you can to provide a description of what you are inputting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to add on just a little bit to that inspections one. So most of what I think what you're referring to as far as inspection concerned, you report in those previous 2 grids. This one here, it's in here because it's in the reporting requirements for 1383. So this would be kind of if you're doing additional site visits outside of the desk audit, you would enter those numbers here. It's not required for you to do so, but that's what this is referring to here.
Okay, thank you.
The next question relates to collection systems. It's from Tim Kruger. If a jurisdiction is only offering a 3-container organic waste service, the jurisdiction has 2,700 generators and no waivers. Only 100 generators have subscribed to the 3-container service. Do we enter 2,700 because that's how many generators have been offered the 3-container service? Or do we only enter the 100 because those are the ones that actually have the service? And Tim, you're unmuted on our end.
The question makes
sense. I didn't have anything other to add, but we were just trying to get some confirmation or clarification on that.
Yeah, so all generators should be provided the 3-container system. They don't, it's not an option under 1383 to choose to subscribe to it or not. So if only 100 in your example have the 3 container system, then the other 2,600 would have to have a waiver of some kind. So the number would still be 2,700, and then you'd report the 2,600 as having a physical space or de minimis waiver in the waivers and exemptions section, if that's what was occurring.
So there wouldn't be any waivers yet. I think in this situation, these folks have not yet subscribed to the system, and their jurisdiction is trying to figure out whether they should be issued a waiver or whether they are going to be needing to subscribe.
Yeah. So I think your number would be the 2,700, and then you could use the additional details box to describe when those 2,600 that do not have service yet will have service.
Okay, thank you very much.
We don't have any more questions in the GoToWebinar question pane, but we can go ahead and check the SLCP inbox. Currently, we do have one question from Allison Abers at Alameda County. From their understanding, the land rep has indicated that CalRecycle expects one completed Alameda unincorporated report for AB 939 programs 341 and 1826, and 3 separate completed for SB 1383, one for each jurisdiction serving unincorporated Alameda County. That is the county and 2 sanitary districts. We understand that the sanitary districts have their own logins for 1383 reports separate from the rest of Alameda unincorporated, but that does not appear to be the case for us in the remaining unincorporated county. Looking at the EAR data entry portal for Alameda unincorporated, it appears SLCP 1383, MCR, Moore, Shree, HWWE reporting are combined, at least under education and outreach tabs. Can you please advise us on how the county can or should report SB 1383 numbers for our part of the unincorporated county separately from the rest of the annual report data for the entire unincorporated county, when the EAR system does not seem to be set up to allow us to do that? The 3 jurisdictions serving unincorporated Alameda County, the county, and the 2 sanitary districts have historically submitted a single EAR. Please assume that the MOUs designating another jurisdiction to submit the EAR would already be in place. And I don't see Allison online, so we'll have to refer to the chat to get any further clarification.
Yeah, it was a loaded question. I'll do my best to answer it, but probably best to have a conversation about this. So the way that the EAR was designed is that we tried to eliminate as much kind of duplication that occurs between AB 939, MCR, Moore, and SLCP. So for education and outreach, using that as an example, what you're reporting here is whether it's education and outreach for 939, MCR, Moore, or SLCP. You would specify that type of education that is provided. The SLC specific part is specifying the number of generators that receive the SLCP material. And then in the describe education and outreach selected, you'd be describing the types of print material that you hand out. You could provide further explanation on what types of print apply to which law, if you'd like to provide that additional detail. Same with electronic, the forms of electronic that are being provided for those various laws. And so if you capture it here in this grid, then down here in the Shree specific category, you do not need to provide any additional description for the AB 939 Shree program specifically per program code. We have it captured here in the notes that if you enter that additional detail in the grid up at the top, no additional description is needed down below. And so this would apply in this particular case to the Alameda unincorporated that did not fall within a special collection district that provides solid waste collection services boundary. So for where there's overlap, you would report, I guess you'd kind of have to report both since you have them all split out. And it'd probably be best to have a conversation about it because your situation's a little unique compared to most. And I think it'd be better to probably walk you through one-on-one. So this would just apply to the unincorporated portion, jurisdictional boundaries. And then in each of your sanitary district reports, you'd report what educational materials for just SLCP is occurring within those boundaries.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm not seeing any new questions coming into the question pane.
Okay. We'll hang out for a little bit, see if anything else pops up.
Okay, we got a new question from Sadie Caldas. When we report the number of generators receiving outreach and we have provided outreach to them multiple times, do we report the total number of generators that received outreach or the number of times we sent outreach to them?
So in the grid, this particular grid you're talking about, you just report the number of generators that receive the SLCP material. If you want to provide additional description on how many times you sent it to them, you could provide that in this text box below.
Andrew, if I could add, you'll need some of that information for record keeping. So just as a reminder, read the record keeping requirements for Article 4, because it does talk about the date and whom the information was disseminated to. So you will need that for record keeping, but you don't necessarily need it for reporting.
Hopefully that cleared that up. The next question we have is from Amber Fizette, asking if I may ask a question about the capacity planning report. If we have an approved NOIC that extends our time for aspects of capacity planning, how do we show that in the report?
So I believe Kara addressed this earlier, but if you have a NOIC that kind of exempts you from portions of reporting, we're already aware of that. So you just enter the information, I guess, that you had. If you want to submit that record, that you have it in there. But we're already aware that you have kind of an exemption or an extension on when you need to submit that capacity planning report.
Amber, you're unmuted on our end if there was anything else you'd like to add.
No, thanks. I think that answers it. Thank you.
Nothing else in the chat so far.
And then really quickly, Amber, for your question, are you a city or a county? Sorry.
We are a county, and that's why I'm recognizing that we still need to submit the report because we have to report on behalf of all the jurisdictions. So I'm thinking that we will have the information we need for the organic waste capacity reporting, but maybe not for the edible food recovery. And so I'm just wondering, I guess, if I just leave blank what we don't have or somehow note that we don't have it yet. And then, I guess if we were also reporting on jurisdictions, we would just put in the information that we have from them as well.
Got it. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. So if the county, like unincorporated county, doesn't have their edible food side, and you do have a NOINC that was approved, but your jurisdictions within the county didn't get a NOINC, and they have that information, I would say that you would still submit their information on behalf of them. And then for you as the county, obviously when we work with you on your corrective action plan, we'll have a timeline addressed in there of when to submit that stuff for CalRecycle. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I mean, if you wanted to, you could self-identify in the report as I'm kind of showing on the screen, using NU as an example. If all your member jurisdictions or your jurisdictions within your county have reported all the information, you could self-report just to kind of note that in the report, but there's not really a text box for you to put those notes in.
So we do have another question. This is from David Briggs. Is there a section of the EAR for jurisdictions monitoring or enforcement of requirements of AB 827 that requires 3 container collection at food service sites that provide seating and waste collections? David, you are unmuted on our end.
Okay, I'm just, and maybe this is the same as the 1276. It's fairly new waste law, but I haven't really seen anything that refers to it. But it's the same thing. The local jurisdictions are supposed to be monitoring those sites that are food service sites that have waste collection where they're providing seating for people to eat. But I don't see anything specific about where we would put that information. So maybe it's like 1276 where we aren't going to report it.
Yeah, you can include it in the monitoring section since it is associated with MCR or more, but there's no direct reporting requirements on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually a good lead. Okay, thank you.
No other questions so far.
We are going until noon. If there are any other questions, we might end early if there's a long period of silence. But until that point, I'll just kind of come back here if any of those latecomers. We did release our webinar recordings that we did in June. The 2 city and county focuses, the regional agencies or designated reporting jurisdiction if you absorbed just special collection districts but are not a regional agency, as well as special collection districts that provide solid waste collection services. All of those webinar recordings explaining the restructured EAR are available now on our reporting website. And I believe you'll be getting a listserv message shortly after this webinar ends with clickable links announcing the release of these recordings. And then as soon as this webinar, as well as the one we have coming up on July 7th, which will be the same format that we're doing today, kind of an open question and answer. We'll also post these in this same area as soon as those are made ADA compliant and we're able to get those posted. So the one on July 7th, I believe is in the afternoon. Let me take a peek real quick, tell you exactly when that one is. Yeah, so July 7th from 1 to 3, we'll have another kind of open Q&A session, the same that we're doing today if you have any more questions on the restructured EAR.
Hey, Andrew. Kara and I would like to go back to, whose question is it? Tim's question about the generators.
Okay.
Is Tim still on? Ray or Esmeralda, can you unmute Tim also?
Yes, Tim, you're unmuted on our end.
So Tim, about your 3 container service question and how many generators have service versus they don't have service yet. We would actually tweak that recommendation a little bit, and you would put the actual number that actually do have that type of service and or have the waiver in place. So for
Okay,
example,
terrific.
in yours, you would just put 100, and then your notes, you would say your 2,600 still need to get service in place.
Okay, terrific. That's kind of what we had thought in the first place. So thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, it's more about current service. And then if you have any that have waivers, you would just add them on to having that service. And you could also put a note like 500 of them have the service, 100 of them have waivers. So there's 600 currently that have a 3-bin service. And then maybe like 1,000 more that still need to have it. And then the date of when you think it'll happen.
Yeah, and Tim, I'll add to Ashley's points. I think it would also be helpful, and this gets back to, I think what Andrew said earlier, the expectation is that, jurisdictions are providing that collection service to all generators or determining that a waiver is issued or maybe that they're allowed to self-haul. And so it might be helpful to add to your detail note, if you're in the process, right, of rolling out mandatory collection service to the remaining, in your example, 2,600, and just kind of what that status is. So I think that adding that clarity would help us if we were doing a compliance evaluation of the city. So appreciate your thoughts on that.
Terrific. Thank you guys so much.
It looks like we have another question that came in from Jana Falk. On the enforcement monitoring, the notice of violations, penalty orders, and enforcement actions don't specify if they are for 1826 or 1383. Do we just put that in the description?
So these grids in particular, let me scroll down to them. Notice of violations, penalty orders, and enforcement actions resolved are all 1383 or SLCP reporting requirements, and it cites the regulatory section of where that requirement comes in. Once you open up kind of we call this kind of the form entry screen of the grid. So this is all 1383 specific. And then if you'd like to put additional detail, that's why we kind of included these additional description boxes. So you can provide additional detail if you like about 1826.
Jana, you're unmuted on our end if you'd like to. Oh, Jana said, thank you. It's just confusing since there are under MCR and not SLCP.
So general build wise, these grids are kind of independent. So you're just in the enforcement and monitoring section with an SLCP grid, a MORE grid, an MCR grid, and then kind of notice violations, penalty orders, and enforcement actions resolved. But something we can consider for future organizations. But we're trying to group things more by kind of subject and category and less by law.
Again, Jenna, you're unmuted on our end if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Okay, I was just gonna say it makes sense for reporting wise, but with the enforcement coming from CalRecycle on everything being very specific to each regulation and not the how we report it, it just makes it confusing for our end. But I understand the back end of it.
Yeah, and these are all things that we want to hear, right? We didn't think that we nailed it perfectly the first time around, but that's good feedback, and we'll consider making adjustments after this reporting cycle. But unfortunately, this reporting cycle, this is the way it'll be, because if we changed it now, it'd kind of on submit everyone's reported information so far, and we don't want to do that to everyone.
Makes sense.
But in general, these form sections, if it's 1383 specific, it always has kind of the regulatory section stated in a tooltip or as a bullet when you're in this form entry screen, if it's specific to 1383.
And I just wanted to add an additional note to Jenna's last comment. Businesses that are subject to MCR and MORE are actually under the 1383 regulations, because 1383 covers all commercial businesses. So I just wanted to add that point of clarification. That's some of our reasoning and how we designed the enforcement, monitoring, notice of violation section. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm talking more about the 1826 informal plans and the enforcement of jurisdictions from CalRecycle, not necessarily our side, because that is, I have a whole lot of thoughts and feelings, but that's not what this this webinar is about. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Question on, I did the export, since no one else is asking questions, so I'll ask some more. The export of the jurisdiction summary, if we do add tonnage in the SHRE programs, is that going to be part of the printed report? Because I mean, granted, right now all of my data is empty, but it's a different report than it used to be. So will that be updated? Oh, never mind. Yeah, I see it here now. The reported year tonnage is 0. Okay, answered my own question. Thank you.
Next, we had a comment on a previous reporting methodology from Lori Mara. Lori, you are unmuted on our end.
Thank you. I'm just trying to figure out how the trends will look for 1826, because previously, based on the last, clarification on, if I have 27 generators, but only 100 are actually under the 3 container system, it's just not consistent with the way we had reported numbers before. So they're going to just look drastically different. So concerned about, trend lines year over year. So just a comment, didn't need a response, but thank you.
Thanks, Laura. I'll just respond really quickly. This is Ashley. we understand that the trend lines may look different depending on how we're reporting. But since we're trying to add in 13A3, I think as you guys are all aware, to make it so you don't have to fill out multiple reports, we understand that things may look different. So when enforcement comes out to do compliance evaluations, we may just need like further clarification on things that were reported in your electronic annual report, and just ask further questions. So I think if the public were to run the report, we would just have the caveat that we did change the reporting system, and if they have any further questions that we could answer that.
Thank you.
All right, we have about 15 minutes left. We'll just hang out because it seems to be questions trickling in as maybe people explore. But just a reminder, about 15 minutes left to answer questions. And then again, we'll have another one of these sessions on July 7th from 1 to 3 p.m.
It looks like we do have a question from Santa Clara. The CalRecycle website indicates they are required to report on 10% of the local large venues, not every venue as we have been doing each year. If that's the case, is there a need for them to attempt to provide data in the annual report for this one non-responsive venue?
Chris, you want to talk about large venues?
Yeah, sure. So, could have thrown off. It's like you never needed to report for all large venues. It's the top 10%. So if this is one of those that's, if I'm thinking Santa Clara proper, you know, Great America, pretty big venue. Levi Stadium, pretty big venue. Those are probably reportable. If it's something smaller and it's not in that top 10% of generators, then no, you don't really need to. And there's always that checkbox in the report saying, you know, they didn't provide info, but you're still letting us know anyway that, hey, at least you tried. But if they're not cooperating, they're not cooperating. But ideally at this point, most of these large places should have some kind of system, whether they're going to give you tonnage data, you know, that can be a little bit more hit and miss. So I hope that answers your question. So yeah, if you were really reporting on all possible, that might have been a little bit too much. And sorry if you had been doing that, but it's really focused on the largest of the large venues and events.
And just to add on to kind of on your screen right now, I'm at the bottom of the commercial programs section, which is where we've moved the large venues kind of question and answer, and then both of those drop downs on venue information kind of states what Chris just said and what constitutes a large venue or event. It's kind of in the upper right. You can click that drop down and it gives you more information.
Thank you for that. Craig Stroud asks, or would like some clarification. Jurisdictions can stop tracking and reporting any MCR and more numbers as of Jan 1, 2022 forward, and switch to only reporting SLCP numbers, such as container system numbers. Is this correct? Does this also apply to a jurisdiction that has a formal plan? Thank you. Craig,
no. Yeah, go ahead.
That's my question. Thank you. I don't have any clarifications, but just trying to understand.
Andrew, you could go ahead first.
The short answer is no. You're still required to report on SLCP, MORE, and MCR. There's a few, I don't know, you kind of a loaded question there. So I'll start with enforcement and monitoring. So for SLCP, you know, kind of up in the, these are kind of the tooltips for it. You're reporting on, you're including the compliance reviews of all solid waste collection accounts for commercial businesses, including multifamily dwellings with 5 or more units that generate 2 or more cubic yards of solid waste, including trash, recycling, and organic waste. What you report in SLCP could potentially be the same numbers, which is kind of what we're stating here, of what you reported in the SLCP grid, because it's the same threshold of that 2 or more cubic yards of solid waste per week. And then in the MCR grid, since it's the other two, oh, sorry, it's the wrong one. But MCR applies to 4 or more cubic yards of solid waste per week are required to recycle, which is kind of what Ashley is saying of why it's all could potentially all be included within your SLCP number. The reason we have all 3 is because not all jurisdictions are required to implement SLCP, but are still required to do more in MCR. So we have to leave those reporting requirements separate, and the laws still have reporting requirements for enforcement and monitoring. The collection system, which I think is the second part of your question, is kind of unrelated to who's included in those compliance reviews. This is just the generators that are provided service. And then Ashley, did you want to add on?
Craig, does that make sense?
It does. I was trying to tie that into the comment earlier where it said that we report on the MCR and MORE numbers for 2021, and then we switch over in 2022 to the SLCP numbers. So I guess for a jurisdiction that has the SLCP requirement, then they don't need to track the MORE and MCR. Would that be correct?
So correct, but there's a caveat, right? So for MCR and MORE, if you are going to report the same numbers that you are doing for SLCP, there may be a different standard, right? So for MCR and MORE, the department does expect 100% compliance, or that you know if the generators are self-hauling and or have a waiver in those programs. So if you're using SLCP numbers and not all of your generators are 100% compliant yet, and you're reporting that for MORE and MCR, we may question a little bit harder on why MCR and MORE is not 100% right now. In terms of formal plans, you should still be giving updates to your LAM contact on your numbers, because you would want to show progression that you do have your generators that are an MCR or MORE, depending on what plan or both plans that you have. You'll want to show that progression to be able to get you off of the formal plan. Does that make sense?
I understand what you said.
Okay.
You don't have anything else in the chat or the inbox so far.
Oh, there actually is one in the inbox. I was just getting ready to read it. It's from Allison in Alameda County. Can more than one person be logged into the EAR at once? Is there anything we need to consider when multiple staff might be accessing and entering data into the report? Yes, more than one person can be in there making changes at the same time, but don't edit the same section of the EAR at the same time. So if someone's working on the procurement tab, no one else should be, because one of you will press save, and then when the other one does, I'm gonna think it's probably not gonna work, because it's gonna say someone else already made a change to that entry. And yeah, so I'd be wary of anyone kind of doing the same thing at the same time, but you could have someone working on procurement tab and someone else working on the collections tab, and that's not an issue.
All right, we have about 5 minutes left. I think we'll just stay the whole time since questions keep trickling in.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go to Konya Vivanti. They state there is some confusion about MCR and more and good faith effort, and now 100% compliance being required. Konya, you're unmuted if you'd like to go ahead and use this forum to discuss.
Hi, can you hear me?
You can just
Yes,
barely
we can. Connie, did you have something else to add? We can't hear you now. We did hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so there's some confusion out there with some of the city recycling coordinators, with some in our business community, and even some of our upper management about MCR and more was good faith effort. And now we're hearing, and some cities are receiving letters that they don't have 100% compliance on either MCR or more, and that they need to. And so the question is, look, what happened to the good faith effort on those two?
Yeah, hi, Kanya. I'll start, and Ashley will also add. So I think we have a couple of things going on. So in the legislation, CalRecycle makes a determination if a jurisdiction with MCR more is making a good faith effort or doing all reasonable and feasible efforts to comply. One of the criteria that we look at, and that's in the legislation, both of those laws, are the number of businesses that are in compliance. And so early on in the early years, as jurisdictions were ramping up, implementing those laws and providing collection services or issuing waivers, we did, I think we were, we provided jurisdictions more flexibility, said that they were making a good faith effort. But as we are now 2012, 2014, a lot of years passed when those laws came into effect. And now that we have SB 1383 regulations taking effect in 2022, which requires all commercial businesses and all residents to either have service or being determined to be self-hauling if the jurisdiction allows that, we are taking a more stringent approach to how we determine a jurisdiction is making all reasonable and feasible efforts when there are still businesses that are not in compliance with MCR and more. MCR and more implementation is a stepping stone. If you've got those businesses that are subject to those laws, either being provided collection service or having determined that they're self-hauling or waived, that's an important, huge step to the bigger requirement that 1383 requires, which is all commercial businesses. So that's why some jurisdictions have been being moved forward onto formal plans to ensure that they are either rolling out collection services to businesses that have not yet subscribed, or they're issuing appropriate and applicable waivers. So that is the shift. And again, it's because these laws have been on the books for, since 2012 and 2014. We've also tried to acknowledge jurisdictions that have been building up their infrastructure to be able to collect and process this organic waste. So much of it ties into where we're at in 2022, many years now to having fully implemented and done all reasonable and feasible efforts to implement that law, and ensuring that commercial businesses are complying by either subscribing to service or appropriately self-hauling, or maybe have de minimis amounts of waste. Ashley, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Kara. One other thing to make very clear is there is no more good faith effort with SB 1383, which is why Kara mentioned that MCR and more were the stepping stones into 1383. So 1383 has more requirements on all the generators in California, including our residents, and there is no longer that good faith effort part written in 1383, which is why we're going towards 100% compliance for the generators that fall under 1383.
I understand that, but I understand what the legislation states, but you know, some people who are new or have new council members or new businesses having to dig and find that information to share with them, because there is some pushback from businesses, particularly for 341, saying, well, I don't fall underneath that. And then many of the cities have implemented an ordinance that includes MCR and the more, obviously, for you know, for 1836, but they're still getting some pushback. And so you know, even some type of little clarification saying, okay, exactly what you just said, probably would be helpful to some of the newer recycling people in the industry who are you know, getting some pushback.
Yeah, hey, Konya, thanks so much for that. Let us see what we've already got and what we could do along those lines. It might be a matter of pointing to some of our existing Q&As, but we could probably add some clarity. So thanks for that feedback. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're right at time, but I think we have time maybe to answer these last couple of questions.
Yeah, so I could do Oscar's really quickly. He asked if there's going to be a second NOIC or possible amendments to existing NOIC. So that would be something that legislature would do. That is SB 619, for those of you who don't know what the NOIC is. So that was a bill introduced by a legislative senator. So that would have to come down from them, and then we would implement it. So sorry, Oscar, I can't really give any more information besides potentially talking to your legislators.
All right, we'll just do one last check. Do we have any more questions at all? We are at time.
There's nothing in the SLCP inbox, so I think the last stuff in the questions pane is it.
And that is just Jenna Falk seconding Konya's request for CalRecycle to be clear on what will be enforced upon.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Well, that concludes our webinar for today. Just one last reminder, July 7th from 1 to 3 p.m., we will hold another open Q&A restructured EAR webinar, where same format as today. So come armed with your questions. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day.